wrongfully imprisoned for 39 years. Imagine spending 39 years locked away for a crime you didn't commit. No DNA, no fingerprints. Just one lie from a 12-year-old boy. This is the story of Ricky Jackson, one of the longest-serving wrongfully convicted men in American history. The investigation into Harold Frank's 1975 murder was rushed and deeply flawed. Detectives were under immense pressure to make an arrest quickly, as the crime had shocked the Cleveland community. Weak evidence. No fingerprints, no murder weapon, no forensic evidence tied Ricky Jackson or the Bridgman brothers to the scene. Faulty eyewitness identification. The entire case hinged on the word of a single 12-year-old boy, Eddie Vernon. At the time, Vernon claimed he saw the three men commit the murder, but he later admitted he had not actually witnessed the crime. Coerced testimony. Years later, Vernon revealed he was pressured by police. Afraid of being punished and eager to please authority figures, he repeated the story they wanted. He even testified under oath despite knowing it wasn't true. Racial bias. Ricky Jackson and the Bridgman brothers were young black men in 1970s Cleveland, making them easy targets in a system where racial prejudice played a role in arrests and prosecutions. No corroboration. Beyond Vernon's statement, there was no evidence placing the men at the scene. Yet the police built the case entirely around his testimony, ignoring glaring inconsistencies. This fragile foundation was enough to convict three innocent men, setting in motion nearly 4 decades of wrongful imprisonment. The trial that should have protected Ricky Jackson instead sealed his fate. Unfair jury process. The jury, influenced by emotion and fear, overlooked the lack of credible evidence. With a young boy's coerced testimony as a centerpiece, the panel ignored the serious inconsistencies in his story. In 1970s Cleveland, systemic bias meant that 3 young black men stood little chance of a fair trial. Ignored alibi. Ricky Jackson had presented a strong alibi. Witnesses could verify that he wasn't at the scene of the crime, but the court brushed those accounts aside, treating them as unreliable compared to the shaky word of a single child witness. No DNA testing at the time. In 1975, DNA testing didn't exist. What could have been the ultimate proof of innocence was unavailable. Without science to challenge the false accusation, the jury had only weak circumstantial evidence, and chose to convict. This combination, racial prejudice, unreliable testimony, and the absence of forensic science, delivered a death sentence to an innocent teenager, later commuted to life in prison. After a rushed investigation and a deeply flawed trial, Ricky Jackson and the Bridgman brothers were found guilty of murder in 1975. Ricky Jackson was originally sentenced to death by electric chair. In 1977, Ohio commuted all death sentences to life in prison, but that did not lessen the injustice. Ricky would go on to serve an unimaginable 39 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit. Nearly 4 decades of his life were stolen by a system that failed to protect the innocent. Spending nearly 4 decades behind bars for a crime he didn't commit could have broken anyone. But Ricky Jackson endured. Faith and resilience. Jackson leaned on his faith and inner strength to keep hope alive. Even as the years stretched on, he refused to give up on the belief that one day the truth would set him free. Education and reading. He spent much of his time reading and learning, determined not to let the prison walls destroy his mind. Books became his escape, his way to keep growing despite being trapped. Finding purpose. Ricky worked jobs inside the prison system, creating structure and routine. He often mentored younger inmates, guiding them to avoid the mistakes he never had the chance to make. Clinging to innocence. Throughout it all, Ricky never wavered in proclaiming his innocence. Even when parole board suggested he admit guilt to gain early release, he refused, choosing truth over freedom. Enduring loss. He missed the funerals of family and friends, holidays with loved ones, and milestones that can never be replaced. Yet, through every heartbreak, he held on. For 39 long years, Ricky Jackson fought not only to survive, but to keep hope alive, until finally justice arrived. They didn't find new DNA evidence because there was no physical or DNA evidence linking Jackson to the crime in the first place. Instead, they focused on reinvestigating the case and tracking down the key witness, Eddie Vernon. What the Ohio Innocence Project found was that the sole witness, Eddie Vernon, recanted his testimony as an adult. He admitted that his original testimony from 1975 was a lie. He was a child who had been pressured and coerced by the police into identifying Jackson as a murderer, even though he had not actually witnessed a crime. Vernon's confession became the critical piece of evidence that led to Jackson's exoneration and release. On the day of his release, after a judge officially vacated his conviction, Ricky Jackson walked out of the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas building. His face, etched with the passage of 4 decades, showed a mix of disbelief and overwhelming relief. He wasn't walking out of a prison, but a courthouse, surrounded not by guards, but by a throng of reporters and supporters. He stepped into a world that had completely transformed since the day he was wrongfully imprisoned as a teenager. The streets of Cleveland bustled with people engrossed in the technology he couldn't have imagined. Cell phones, which had replaced payphones and landlines, and the constant digital stream of social media, a concept that didn't exist when he went away. He saw cars he'd never seen before and encountered a world where information was instant and pervasive. His first moments of freedom were captured in an emotional scene as he was reunited with his brother, Wiley Bridgman, who had been freed a few months earlier. They shared a long, tearful embrace, a powerful symbol of their shared and unimaginable journey through a flawed justice system. Jackson's words summed up his feelings perfectly. He was overwhelmed and trying to process the fact that he was finally free. While his conviction was overturned, the state offered a meager sum, a pittance of the decades that were stolen from him. A life can't be bought back. His story isn't just about an innocent man finally going free. It's a stark reminder that the fight for true justice doesn't end when the prison gates open. This isn't just one man's story. It's a window into the systemic flaws that leave thousands of innocent people behind bars. If you found this story compelling, help us bring these injustices to light. Hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to join our community.